Story title: Poor girl crashed a billionaire wedding to save her dying brother. Before the city woke, before the horns tore through the silence, before smoke climbed the morning sky over Lagos, Ruth was already on the move. Her slippers struck the broken asphalt as dawn stretched pale and weak across the horizon. She carried a worn leather bag, once a schoolchild's treasure, now swollen with folded bills and medicine prescriptions she could never pay for. Every step she took was driven by the hollow cough that echoed in her mind. Her younger brother David, his chest rattling like a broken drum, his breaths too shallow, his fever unyielding. The city stirred around her, hawkers calling out pure water, gala, recharge card, buses screeching, children rushing to school. Above her, a billboard declared, "True love deserves the grandest wedding, Golden Bay Hotel, Victoria Island." The smiling bride on the poster glittered in diamonds. Ruth's eyes stung, not with envy but with fury. She thought of David, his lips cracked, his eyes glazed with pain, lying on their mat while the city poured millions into a gown and a hall of glass. She whispered under her breath, broken and desperate, "God, what am I supposed to do?" The question hung in the humid air, unanswered, yet pushing her toward a choice that would alter every path before her. Ruth's life had never been gentle. Their mother, Mary, once a trader at Balagan Market, died too soon, her hands worn from years of lifting baskets heavier than her own strength. Their father had vanished long before, leaving only a torn photograph. Ruth was just 14 then, with David clinging to her wrapper, crying through the nights. She remembered rain dripping through the holes in their zinc roof, remembered staring at an empty pot and pretending she wasn't hungry, so David could eat the last scoop of Gary. She remembered walking barefoot with a school bag whose straps were tied with rope, dreaming of a classroom that soon became unreachable because survival demanded her hands, not her books. Still, there had been small light. A neighbor, Mama Grace, sometimes slipped them bread. A teacher once pressed a pencil into Ruth's hand and said, "Don't stop writing, girl. Your words will carry you one day." But dreams blurred when the fevers began. David's cough grew heavier, the bills sharper, the medicine rarer. The hospital's white corridors smelled of bleach and hopelessness. The doctors always shook their heads. Without treatment, his chances were thin. The figure on the bill rose higher than Ruth could count. It was in those long walks between market stalls and hospital halls that Ruth first noticed Julian. She had been in church, sitting beneath the cracked cross that leaned above the altar, the hymn book torn at the edges. Julian's voice carried through the room like a quiet promise, smooth and golden, out of place in the noise of the city. His suit was simple, but his presence heavy. Ruth caught herself staring longer than she should have, her heart caught between longing and fear. For a moment, she felt seen. Their paths crossed again near Balagan Market. Julian, carrying bottled water, saw Ruth stumble as she balanced a heavy tray. He steadied her, smiled softly, and bought more than he needed just so she could rest. Their words were brief, just a thank you, just a smile, but for Ruth it was a crack of light through a shuttered window. Slowly, they began to meet in small spaces, a shared loaf of bread, a walk after church, a laugh at something ordinary. His kindness was a balm she had not known in years. But kindness can sometimes carry shadows. Mama Grace, her voice heavy with years, once said, "Be careful, my child. Gold that shines too bright can burn your hand." Ruth laughed it off then, not knowing how those words would return to cut her open. Julian belonged to another world. His family owned land in Victoria Island, their company's glass buildings scraping the sky. Yet with Ruth he was gentle, and he made her believe that maybe love could bridge the gap between streets and skyscrapers. For a brief season, joy filled her nights. When Julian whispered that he wanted her in his life, she dared to dream again. The betrayal struck like lightning on a clear day. Ruth had gone to see him, heart steady, hope alive. She heard laughter before she entered. Around the corner, she froze, Julian in a suit, standing beside another woman draped in silk. Guests clapped, champagne flowed, voices shouted congratulations. Her ears rang. Then she heard his mother's voice, sharp and cold. Finally, the perfect bride. This union will secure everything. Ruth's vision blurred. She stumbled back, her hands trembling, the hospital bill slipping from her bag onto the polished floor. Someone stepped on it, leaving a shoe print across the only proof of her desperation. Her chest caved in as her dreams collapsed. She cried that night until her throat burned. David, weak on the mat, whispered, "Don't cry, Ruth. You'll find a way. You always do." And in that fragile voice, she found steel. If love had betrayed her, if the city had ignored her, she would carve a path even through fire. The plan was dangerous, desperate, but it was all she had. The wedding at Golden Bay was lavish, the true bride hidden until the last moment. Ruth had overheard enough to know faces mattered less than dresses, symbols more than truths. If she could step into that gown, even for one day, even under disguise, she could reach the heart of the wealth that had crushed her. And from it, maybe she could wrestle out the lifeline her brother needed. The morning of the wedding, Ruth's body shook as she dressed. With the help of an old seamstress who pitied her, she slipped into satin that was not hers, diamonds that belonged to another. Her heart thundered with fear and defiance. The hall glittered with chandeliers, the air rich with perfume and laughter. The guests rose, the music swelled, and Julian turned, his eyes widened, confusion and recognition warring in his gaze. The ceremony unfolded, every second a knife against Ruth's throat. Yet she stood, not for herself, but for David. Whispers spread. Faces frowned. A truth too sharp to be hidden began to crack through the glitter. The public showdown came not in the vows, but in the reception, when an elder demanded answers, when papers surfaced, when Ruth's mask tore apart under scrutiny. Her voice, shaking but firm, carried across the hall. "I did this not for wealth, not for greed. I did it because my brother is dying, and the world gave me no other way." Gasps filled the room. Some jeered, others looked away. But Julian, his face pale, stepped forward, not as a groom, but as a man split between duty and shame. His family's empire trembled under scandal, the wedding shattered, yet the truth stood bare. Ruth's disgrace was public, yet her courage undeniable. In the days that followed, the city buzzed with scandal. Ruth retreated, broken but not destroyed. She spent her nights scribbling plans, making calls, begging for aid. Quietly, she found allies, a lawyer who believed in justice, a nurse who slipped her discounted medicine, a donor moved by her courage. Piece by piece, she built a net that held David from the edge of death. When the final reckoning came, it was not in a church but in a courtroom. Julian's family, furious at the humiliation, tried to strip her of dignity, to brand her a fraud. But evidence of their own corruption surfaced, whispered truths made public, wealth smeared with greed. Ruth stood in silence as the judge read the verdict. The family's mask collapsed, their gold turned to ash. And then came quiet victory. David, frail but smiling, took his first steps outside the hospital after weeks of treatment. Ruth watched him with tears sliding down her cheeks, the sun bathing them in light. She had lost love, lost pride, but saved the one life that mattered most. Julian found her once more, not in grandeur but in a small clinic where she volunteered. His voice was low, almost broken. "I should have fought for you." Ruth met his gaze, steady and calm. "It's too late for that. What matters now is that my brother lives." The city moved on, scandals replaced by new ones, weddings by newer brides. But in a small corner of Lagos, Ruth found peace in simple things. David's laughter, the smell of fresh bread, the kindness of strangers who became friends. She stitched her life back with threads of resilience, not silk but stronger. In the end, there was no crown, no riches, no grand triumph. There was only survival, dignity, and the quiet glow of knowing she had faced the fire and not been consumed. Ruth walked once more through the streets of Lagos at dawn, her bag still old, her slippers still worn. But this time, her heart carried something new, hope that had been tested, broken, and remade into strength. The city roared around her, uncaring as always, yet she moved with calm. She had chosen life, chosen love for her brother, chosen courage. And in that choice, she had already won.